Welcome to the Stream of Art podcast. Join me, Robyn.
And me, Michelle, as we chat openly about personal growth, creativity, and building a career in the arts. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 14th episode of the Stream of Art podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the fear of failure. But first, as always, we will do our check-in to see how our weeks went. So, Robyn, how did your week go?
I think it went okay. I still haven't finished the commissions, but I'm close. They're nearly there. I got them both to a point. So there's always like kind of a period of like the messy middle. Mm-hmm. And I got them both to the point of the messy middle, which was kind of a mistake because then it was really hard to like push myself through that phase. It would have been better just to stick with one all the way through and then start the next one.
Right.
But I was just, for whatever reason, I was just like, I just really didn't want to do the work to get myself through that part. But I got myself through that. So that's good. And those will be in good shape to be done this week. And I don't know what else I was going to do this week. That was kind of the main focus. My updates are getting kind of more and more boring.
I think that's a good thing, though. I mean, especially because it's really just a product of your consistency with doing your painting and stuff like that. I think that's a great place to be in. I think there's definitely something exciting when you're first embarking on like a new habit building adventure where you're like, I'm going to do this, like you're doing the challenge. Like there's a lot of excitement in the beginning, but that dissipates pretty quickly. Like once you get into it, it just kind of feels like business as usual. And I think that's a really exciting place to be in because you know that you have this momentum going that is just going to keep moving you forward. And it'll get to a point where, you might hit a point and you notice like a big improvement in something. Like I noticed this with my practicing where when I'm in a really good practice groove, I will go for, weeks, months on end. And I'll have these moments of just like huge improvement, but they feel just like, oh, like cool. It's really nice. I like the experience of something that is initially new and exciting becoming just kind of familiar and comfortable, especially when it's something good, like, creating or practicing or whatever. Yeah, no, solid point. And the 100-day project, I'm sticking with it, which is exciting for me as someone who is really good at starting things and not completing. But I have stopped posting about it on Instagram every day. Like I'm just gonna because I got tired. I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like there's So I'll post when I'm done the painting. I'll just post the final product with the 3 in progress pictures or whatever. Oh, perfect.
Or 2 in progress pictures. Yeah. So I'll share every 3 days. So how was your week?
My week was pretty good. It was still kind of a recovery week, but I also was getting some things done that I got behind on. So I did a little bit of cleaning in the apartment. I installed the latest Ableton. So Ableton Live 12 dropped on the 5th.
Woohoo.
So I installed that, which the program itself, of course, did not take very long to download, but it's all the packs. There were like new packs to install, and then there were like pack updates, and those took, a good chunk of a day. I had to spread it out over 2 days to get it all downloaded. So that's when I used the opportunity to get some cleaning done at the same time. Thought, that's perfect. I got, of course, Cal Newport's new book, which I'm about halfway through, and it's excellent. I'm definitely enjoying it. And it's interesting because I've been hearing him talk about these ideas for a couple of years, and I've been hearing the progress of this, this slow productivity philosophy, but I'm still getting so much from reading the book. Just, the examples he's including are really interesting and really helpful. And I feel like as I'm reading it, I'm getting all these ideas of things I can, both apply to my own musical life and also that I can use in my work in the stuff I do with teaching and talking about these ideas and all of that. So I'm really enjoying that. Also, something I forgot to mention last week is that as part of Courtney Swain's Patreon, I'm reading The Artist's Way, where I'm working through it, not just reading it, of course, working through The Artist's Way for the first time. I got the book 2018, 2019. I think it's because, I think it was because Courtney had talked about it. And so I got it, and I think I maybe made it 3 weeks in and just didn't complete it.
That was
I think was not the right time.
Yeah.
And so I think Courtney said the same thing. She's made it through or has worked on it like 2 or 3 times, but hasn't actually made it through the full 12 weeks, but, wants to do it this time. So doing it with the Patreon crew kind of helps to keep us all accountable. So I had to read the introduction for that this week. So my first official week starts tomorrow. That'll be good. I'm excited is maybe not the right word, but I'm curious. I'm interested to see what I get out of it. I'm actually trying not to go in with any expectations.
Yeah.
I just want to be completely open to see what kind of things I learn about myself and what kind of revelations I have, if any. You know?
I always have kind of a resistance to those things that people claim have changed their lives. And like, this is one of those things where, like, I've heard this reference so many times, and when I hear that, I immediately question the thing. But I got that book in 2020, and I think it was similar 3 weeks through. I don't remember anything. The only thing I remember is the daily pages, which were really helpful to me at the time, but it wasn't really, it was just a brain dump of the things that were happening in like my job versus anything to do with like creativity.
Right. I think that's okay though. I think she says like it's just getting the stuff out of your head that stands between you and creating.
Yeah.
And if stuff that's stressing you out about work is getting in between you and doing your art, that is something worth getting out.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll be really curious to hear like your experience of it, because I might revisit. I still have like the workbook and the book, and I haven't gotten rid of it because I'm still curious to revisit it myself at some point.
I recently was listening to a podcast where they were talking about how The Artist's Way is a book that most artists have on their bookshelf, whether they've actually gone through it or not.
We hear it referenced all the time.
All the time, yeah. And I feel like it's almost like a rite of passage to buy it, and then at some point to maybe take it on in earnest and really give it a go. So we'll see. I'll just be impressed if I stick with it, because 12 weeks is a long time.
It's a very long time. Yeah.
Especially when I have so much else that I can be focusing on. I feel like that's going to be the real barrier for me, is not losing steam. And maybe that's where I have to get to a point where the pages I'm not worried about, because I journal every day. I journal every morning already. So basically I'm just going to be doing that instead. It just means I have to do a couple more pages, but doing like an artist date every week, I feel like that's going to be really tough for me. I think it's going to be very difficult for me to justify taking that time for myself to do something just by myself, especially if I'm having to go and do something.
Yeah.
I think the temptation to want to try to get somebody to come with me. Also because I spend so much time on my own. Like I really want to make sure I'm not, committing to an artist date each week, but then never seeing another human being outside of, like teaching. But like I've just had a lot of time in isolation since moving here. So one of the things I wanted to do come the springtime was spend more time with people. So that's going to be a little bit tricky, I think, for me to have to get up and go do something just with myself, because I do so much by myself. But
right.
I mean, again, part of the course, I want to take it seriously and really give it a good try. So
I mean, you might get some ideas too. Like doing it with a group, I think is awesome, because then it becomes, it's hard to stick with things when you're doing it solo, but especially if it's not
definitely
really resonating with you. But if you're doing it with a group, and you might get some interesting ideas from them too.
Because
like,
you're right.
I'm thinking about the artist date now, and I was like, I don't remember, were there rules around it? Because I don't remember thinking of it as something I had to go out and do necessarily, but
And I don't
something
think you
that would,
have to, but
yeah,
I know I need to leave the apartment.
yeah, right,
I mean,
right.
I do have some ideas for things I'm going to do that I could just do in the apartment, just because I know it's not going to be feasible for me to get out every week for 2 to 3 hours. But I have some ideas of things to do as well that where I can just like there's a library near me that I would like to walk to. It's like 20
Right,
minutes away. Like something like that. Walk to a bookstore, go see
right.
a movie, like something like that. That is like also because I don't have a car. Like I need something within roughly walking
Yeah,
distance. So even just going for a walk or something. Yeah. So I have some ideas, but it is so easy for me to talk myself out of stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
So that'll I think be the most challenging part for me. But the pages will be easy. It'll be nice for me to also have a good reason to force myself back into getting up earlier, because
Right.
I've like completely fell off the wagon. I got up early this morning, but to do that a week straight, that might take a little bit of adjusting. But anyways, I know I'll be able to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah. I realized that we lost an hour of sleep last night. So I've been trying to
We
get
did.
like, yeah. And I didn't realize that until this morning. I was like looking at the oven. I'm like, why is the oven telling me that it's only 6 o'clock in the morning? And I've been trying to get like the same amount of sleep every night. And I was already late getting to bed last night. And then to realize, oh, I only got 6 hours of sleep. I'm like, oh, shoot.
Yeah, same. Actually, I got to bed at an okay time, but of course then I go and I adjust my clock. I'm like, oh, that's terrible. I should have been better about accounting for that extra, or for the loss of the hour.
I completely forgot it was happening. Usually I remember the time change. Like, and in this case, I completely forgot that was a thing. Thank goodness for iPhones that automatically adjust, because otherwise I wouldn't be on the call right now.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, no, I would have been. Wait, would I have been? So it went.
No.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, I would have sent you a message.
Yeah.
I was sort of like, I was a little curious if you were going to sign on.
I was thinking the same thing about
at
you.
9 o'clock, I was like, I wonder if she is. And then you showed up and I was like, oh, good. Everybody's, yeah. And I think that I had that happen a long time ago when I first started teaching. The first time change as a teacher, I remember having students show up early or show up late or something.
Oh,
Can't remember, but yeah, it's interesting how by this point, I think because so many of our clocks are just automated,
yeah,
we don't even have to think about it.
Yeah,
and then you have like that weird awkward day to, a day and a half to 2 days, or it's like you haven't changed the rest of the clocks that don't change. So like the stove is like an hour behind, and the microwave. I'll get to it.
Or my car, like I never changed because I don't know I always forget how to do it, so I just don't do it. And then I'll bring it in for like a tire change or something, and then they'll do it for me because they're just like, why isn't this done?
Just like, no, it means I get to do some math in my head.
Yeah. It keeps that part of my brain, fit.
Yeah, exactly. Today's full-on topic is fear of failure. So this was partly inspired by our conversation from last week, which was about fear of success.
Mm-hmm.
I think these kind of go hand in hand, although there are, of course, some differences. But also I had a friend, talk about feeling that fear of failure around their music. And I'm like, that's such a universal experience, I think. So yeah. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that fear of failure with my painting. Like, what if a painting doesn't work out? But it doesn't get to me too much. It can stress me out, like that kind of like, oh, what if it doesn't work out? It can stress me out. It can make me feel like when it doesn't work out, it feels bad in the moment. But it's not something that prevents me from showing up and trying. For me personally, and maybe that's just I've had enough experiences now where it's like I know I can make good things. So when I make something that looks terrible, it's like that's just part of it. Like that's inevitably you're going to make things that don't work out. It's just part of the process. But when I was thinking kind of fear of failure, it was interesting because I was thinking like for me, like failure is kind of encompasses many different things. And I feel like there's sort of two streams in my mind. Like there's sort of
Mm-hmm.
situational failure, which is like I go to an
Mm-hmm.
art show and I want to break even and I don't make any money because there's no foot traffic. Like that's sort of like a situational failure. I don't have much control in that situation. And then
Mm.
it's a matter of, okay, well, what was successful about this? What can I take away from this experience? And then there's kind of like core failure, which is the thing that terrifies me. And that's the not even trying
Mm-hmm.
of having a goal and then not showing up for yourself and
Mm-hmm.
not following through. And that's where I've experienced that kind of failure a lot. And what's so scary about that kind of failure is that every time it happens, I mean, you can still learn from it. You can learn from any failure. But when you don't show up, you lose trust in yourself. And so it can be a really damaging type of failure and something that can be really hard to kind of repair and grow
Mm-hmm.
from and bounce back from. So like that's the type of failure that freaks me out. And to the point where, I mean, the 100-day project is a great example. Like I had quite a bit of anxiety committing myself to it because I've had a lot of experiences of taking projects on that I don't follow through on, and I could have pushed
Mm-hmm.
myself. It wasn't like a, well, that was way too much to take on. It was a, you just didn't push yourself. You just didn't show up. You made that choice. And as a
Mm-hmm.
result, you didn't complete this thing and it was a failure. So saying yes to the 100-day project was so scary because I'm like, I don't want to experience that, which is kind of funny because I'm like, I'm the one, I have complete control. It's not like, it's funny that I fear this kind of failure when it's like, I have complete control in showing up, in making that decision for myself. But I think part of it's just, it's a loop because the trust that I have in myself is a bit fractured. So I'm trying to build that up. Right. And
Right.
there's a fear there that I will do something that will fracture that trust again and then I'll have to repair it again and you know it's all a process. But yeah, those were my kind of initial thoughts, and I don't know if any of that resonates or if any of that made sense, but that kind of situational failure, it doesn't, it never feels good, of course, but it's like there's always learning. It's
Mm-hmm.
what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking about, the times you've let yourself down before where maybe you started something and you don't see it through and you could have pushed yourself. I've had a lot of that
Yeah.
where I fail something because I failed to bring my full self,
Yeah.
my best self to a situation.
Yeah.
I didn't show up the way I feel like I should have. This is something I'm trying to work through because I've had a lot of instances in my life, musically speaking, but of course beyond that, where looking back, I feel like I could have done better. But it's so easy to think that from where I am now. I'm trying to really remember to have that compassion for myself and specifically for my past self. Because I
Yeah.
think there are some times, this is not always the case. I think it's really important to acknowledge when you've just fallen short and you could have done better because hopefully it spurs you to do better the next time. But I think to not always default to that assumption that, oh, I was just bad. I'm terrible. I should have done it. And because then you end up just beating yourself up. And also I think missing out on seeing what you were able to accomplish through, like for me, through really
Right.
difficult periods in my life. So this is
Right.
kind of like a bit of a tangent. This is just something I've been thinking about for myself as I'm trying to reflect on my past and on my failures and, trying to learn from those experiences. And some of that is something I definitely have control over and I can do better now and I do better now. But there is also an element for me of needing to just have that empathy for my past self. I think she was doing the best she could and she did the things she had to do to get me here. So that I have a lot of maybe not quite forgiveness yet, but there's an understanding. That's been something that's been kind of on my mind lately as far as that kind of failure goes. And what I'm trying to do now is just look at where I may be doing some of those or falling into some of those same patterns where maybe I'm not pushing myself as much as I know I could, or I'm not challenging myself in ways like, where am I maybe playing it too safe?
Right.
So that I can just be not letting any of those failures go to waste. Is for me, actually, as far as failure goes, I think a lot of my issues with being afraid to fail came from being afraid of what other people would think. This is, again, tied to like my perfectionist tendencies.
Yeah.
Because I was so desperate for the approval of others, and I felt like I needed to be perfect to get it.
Right.
If I failed, suddenly now there goes all my value and all my worth. Now suddenly I'm not good enough, and what are other people going to think? They're going to think I'm a fraud. They're going to think I'm bad. They're going to think I'm a liar when I talk about how much I work on my craft, but it's like, oh, but I messed up this note, or I didn't perform well, or whatever, like whatever the outcome is. I think a lot of that, I had a lot of anxiety tied to how other people might see me, because I had this strong identity to being a musician, and as I've talked about before, being pretty good at it. Like I picked it up quite quickly, but I still, of course, I've had to work. And, you know, if I did a performance that didn't go as well, a lot of that was just I didn't practice the way I needed to, or sometimes I didn't practice enough, you know, depending again on the circumstances. But because I was so tied to that identity, and my self-worth was so tied to being good at music, anything less than excellence was just so scary to me. So it has made me play it pretty safe. I think I would be much farther along if I had disentangled my sense of self-worth from my musicianship and my musicianhood, because I think I would have taken more risks. But to me, like, putting myself out there and, you know, giving a bad performance, it just felt like too high a cost.
Yeah.
Because if all of a sudden people are seeing that I'm not perfect, I don't know, then where can I go from there? So I've had to do a lot of working through that. And as I've been able to do that, you know, I've, you know, come to appreciate the value of making mistakes.
Yeah.
Really. And I prefer that. I don't love the term failure, actually.
It's not, no, it's a terrible term. I think ultimately, like, where failure kicks in is if you make a mistake or you have a less than ideal experience and you refuse to learn from it, then that's a true failure. Like, yeah. Otherwise, like, there is, yeah, like, so, you know, with my day job, we the program that I help manage it's an entrepreneurial program for high school students. So they work in groups to build a business, and so many of them have to go through the process of sort of redefining what they consider failure, or redefining what they consider success. Because, like, you know, at the beginning, it's like success is tied to how much money they're making, and then they don't make as much money as they expected to pull in from their products, and then they kind of go through this process of feeling like they failed. But it's like, but look at all you learned, like, through this process. Like, yeah, the outcome wasn't what you had defined as being a successful outcome at the beginning, but it's still a successful outcome because you stuck with it and you showed up and you persevered and you learned a ton, right? And I think, yeah, if failure is not the right, it has too many negative connotations.
There's like a finality to it.
Yeah.
That's just not, if you have the right mindset, you're not going to think of it as like this final thing, like, oh, you failed. It's like, no, you made a mistake, and every mistake is a stepping stone that's going to get you to where you want to go. Yeah. You just have to use them to launch yourself forward.
It's like that. It's the fail forward concept, right?
Yeah.
I actually kind of I kind of like to, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but I like to collect failures. Like because every time there's something that I, you know, quote unquote fail at, which is usually it's because of circumstances outside of my control, right?
Yeah.
And usually, like, you know, when that happens, I just look at a different way of, like, it's a learning opportunity. But you kind of, like, failure is almost like a rite of passage too.
Definitely.
So I sort of collect these, and it makes me feel like I'm it reminds me that I'm actually trying, you know, like because if you don't fail,
Yeah.
if you don't have failures, it means you've never truly tried or you never truly put yourself out there. So
Yeah.
I wear them as kind of like badges of honor because there was a time in my life where I would never have put myself out there the way that I do now. And so it's kind of like a happy reminder. Yeah, for me, again, like the fear kicks in with I fear letting myself down. I fear not showing up, and how that's going to feel. But failure itself is not super scary. I mean, uncomfortable, but not super scary to me. And I'm also thinking, I think I'm lucky in that, like, there's an element of, what are people going to think about me? Are people going to judge me kind of thing? But I feel like I'm lucky with painting because people don't necessarily know what makes a painting good or bad. Like people aren't necessarily going to notice the things that you notice about or that I notice about my work that makes one painting weaker than the next painting.
Yeah.
And so there's a little less fear about being found out or called out, you know? Whereas I can imagine with music, it's a bit of a different situation because we can hear a wrong note. Like we can pick up on that. So I feel like as artists, as painters and stuff, we have a bit more freedom in that area. We can go off book and people don't necessarily notice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because for me, and it keeps coming back to control. We keep talking about that. And I think it's because I think for me, it's such a big issue. I think, when I'm working on a song, so like something I'm doing like for RPM, there's still definitely like anxiety around that, but there's more control for me from this vantage point than if I'm like, for example, on a stage performing.
Right.
Because there's no chance to go back. If I'm recording some lead guitar for a song and I do a bad take, I just do another take. Like
right.
But there's something about live performances where there's that pressure to get it right and get it perfect because you don't get any do-overs. Which I mean, you can't.
I mean, that's a fair pressure to feel, right? Because like, how many times have you heard? Like, I've heard people complain about going to live concerts and being like the person was singing off key the whole time. Like, it's fair to feel that pressure because I do think that audiences can be very judgmental.
Well, I think there is something to be said for if you are a performing artist, you should be honing your craft as a performing artist. So the act of like right now I'm very rusty. I wouldn't go and try to like sell tickets to a show because I'm so rusty. I would have to go and play a bunch of live shows first to kind of get back into that kind of mindset and get my chops back for playing live. Because when I was doing it often enough, I got a lot better. And, but I've been doing so much in the way of just working at my computer, really writing songs. So it's a very different set of tools. And you definitely should, if you perform live as a musician, you should be working on your craft and trying to do the best you can. Like, don't go up completely unprepared, like be prepared. But part of being prepared means recognizing that you are going to make mistakes because it is just a part of being a human being and not a robot. Yeah. And so one of the things you have to learn when you're a musician is how to recover from mistakes. You can't let it derail your performance. And like the really great musicians can take a mistake and turn it into something, you're repeated enough times and it becomes correct. So there are things you can definitely do to work around a mistake. And there are like challenges to performing live too that sometimes, if a singer is singing off key, it might be because their monitoring system is bad and they can't hear themselves. So like there are so many different factors and it's sort of always coming down to remembering what's in your control and what isn't. And so being as prepared as possible, making sure that whatever gear you have is in good shape too. And then, trying to just manage your expectations and taking it in stride if things don't go well or if you have you're dealing with technical issues at the venue or whatever. But anyways, that's a whole different headspace. So yeah, that was, I think for me, a big issue. And I really shied away from performing for a long time. Like I definitely have not performed nearly as much as I could have, but because I felt so much anxiety around playing and not playing perfectly and then all of a sudden people are going to know I'm not as great as I thought I was, or they thought I was, or whatever. But really, it's, something you start to realize is that people don't really care, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah.
You don't have a lot of people who are going to be watching or listening or seeing your work.
Right.
So, like, the beginning is the time when you want to take risks, because it doesn't matter if people see your mistakes.
Yes.
And the more mistakes you make, the better you get faster. And this is something that Adam Grant talked about in his book, Hidden Potential. He had a section where he was talking with experts in language learning. So these people who are, they're like these polyglots who are fluent in numerous languages. And he was talking to one of them, and they were saying that really one of the keys to learning a language quickly is to make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And so that's actually the goal. I think one of the people he talked to had like a specific goal of like, if I'm learning a new language, I want to be making this many mistakes per day, because that's how you really make it stick. You make a mistake, you learn what the correct way of saying something is. Of course, you don't want to not correct mistakes. You get the mistake as a catalyst for learning the correct way of doing something, and then it sticks. It sticks much better.
Oh, that's so interesting. So it's almost like, I'm thinking with my painting. Yeah, like you need to get rid of that fear of failure, because if you're scared of making a mistake and you're constantly trying to avoid mistakes, it also means that you're not going to look at your work or listen to your work, whatever the case may be. You won't have a super kind of analytical approach to that. Analytical, is that the right word? No, you're not going to be looking at it through an eye of constructive criticism, because you're so scared of making mistakes. You're not going to see where you need to improve or where your blind spots are, because you have that fear of failure, fear of mistakes. So I'm just thinking like it would be kind of a cool creative exercise for me to try doing a landscape painting that is just all mistakes. So like mess up the proportions, don't include the atmospheric perspective, like, all sorts of, I don't know what the point of that would, well, I guess just to be comfortable with things looking bad, like try to paint a bad painting.
I've heard that advice for songwriting, like don't worry about writing a good song, write a bad song.
Yeah.
It's actually very challenging to like go out of your way to create something that is bad. So yeah, definitely I think dissipates that fear around producing something bad, because you see that it's not the end of the world. Nobody dies.
Yeah.
If I write a bad song, everybody's still going to be alive. And, that's also, it informs what to do. You learn what to do by learning what not to do.
Yeah.
You don't know what it feels like to write a good song if you haven't written a bad one, or to paint a good painting if you haven't painted a bad one, or like I have this all the time with guitar students where they're so worried about like playing a chord wrong. I'm like, but that's part of how you learn, is like you play a chord incorrectly, and that helps to inform what the correct way of playing it is, because you'll hear the difference, you'll feel the difference. It's not until you've had the experience of the wrong way that the right way becomes clear. It takes some time, and you have to learn how to get comfortable with being in that place where you're still just making mistakes, because you make enough and you'll find your way there.
And it's good too, because we've kind of talked about this in sort of a different context, but if you can identify that you've made a mistake, that's a good sign, because it means you have the awareness that you're not where you want to be or need to be.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. That's the thing that will allow you to improve, is that awareness. If you don't have that awareness, you're never going to improve, because you're not working on anything. You're not seeing the mistakes or not seeing those areas of improvement in the first place. So you'll just continue playing as you play, or paint as you paint, without things evolving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're gonna become so stagnant so quickly.
Yeah.
Because anytime you learn something new, so even if you're, let's say you sort of attain a certain level of proficiency on an instrument, maybe you learn, like this is very common for guitarists, right? You learn like 4 chords and then don't do anything else because it's hard. But it's so good to be playing something that sounds bad because it means you're stretching yourself. There's this idea that if you're practicing and it sounds good, then you're not really practicing because you're not doing something new or challenging, and you're not going to be stretching yourself. Unfortunately for me, that's actually an area where that didn't bother me. It didn't bother me to try to learn something new and have it sound bad in the beginning. It just made me more determined. A lot of my failure fears came again around what other people thought. A lot of that I just had to outgrow and kind of work through, but I'm so glad that was never something that stopped me. Yeah, I liked that kind of a challenge. I liked, again, the experience of something sounding bad and then eventually sounding good. And I still get that. I mean, for as long as I've been doing music, to be able to find something that I can do that doesn't sound great. Like I talked about that earlier, talking about how one of the things I want to work on this year is mixing, because I know my mixes do not sound great, but that's all part of it. I know I'm making a lot of mistakes, but if I don't know what a bad mix sounds like, I'm never going to know what a good mix sounds like. So I'm just, at this point, I know to just feel comfortable being here and to just do more. Like I know that's generally going to be a great solution when you're really struggling to, create something or to practice something, is you just do it more often because you're giving yourself more of those opportunities to make mistakes. And each mistake, if you have a way of knowing what to do to correct it, of course, because if you're making mistakes and you don't know how to fix it, that's incredibly frustrating. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that's where getting guidance from a teacher or a mentor or a peer is really, really important. And that also, I think that opens people up to feeling pretty vulnerable. Like I get a lot of students who are starting out and they're so afraid of playing something for me that sounds bad or singing a note that sounds bad. I'm like, no, that's what I'm here for.
Right.
You want to make mistakes in front of me because I'm going to be able to tell you how to do it better. So that's what I deal with a lot of my students is like helping them get comfortable with making mistakes. Because if you live your life constantly in this, falling into this safety net of just doing the things that come easily, you're missing out on a lot.
It's so as you're saying that, it makes me think of like where I have that kind of fear of failure is with singing. And like, I don't like singing in front of people because I might I will hit a wrong note because I don't practice singing. And just kind of realizing like the fact that I expect to be able to, like the fact that I think that people just know how to sing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's not
a very common misconception.
Yeah, that's not the case. It's not like people just have like perfect pitch immediately. Like it's something you work towards, or like they don't just, Mariah Carey, well, actually that's probably a bad example. Maybe she did just wake up and was just singing that way. I don't know. But yeah, it's just kind of funny that, so I feel that fear of that, and that is a fear of making a mistake and people hearing it. It doesn't, for me, I don't feel that with my art, but I feel that in other areas for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're totally right. Like if you avoid that experience, which I have, and it means I don't sing. Well, I do, but only alone in the shower or in my bedroom. And you're missing out on a whole hobby or passion or whatever that, just because you think that because you're not immediately good at it, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something I deal with so much with students, especially my vocal students. I think there's something so personal about your voice.
It's very vulnerable.
It is.
Like, that's how I feel.
I feel like it's I feel like it's almost a sense of like rejection. Like if somebody doesn't like your voice, they don't like you. I think that's, again, maybe that's me projecting, because that's a lot of what I dealt with. But
no, I that resonates with me, because like, playing a chord on the guitar wrong, like, well, then it's kind of like there's like sort of like a distance between me and that, because there's the guitar has a role to play as well, and that's an external thing, so there's almost like something else to place the blame on, whereas
the guitar the strings are really old,
right, and it's just because my hand's too small, and whereas when it's your own voice, it's like there's no, that is you. So I'm remembering now that I had a lot of that anxiety around my singing too, because I wanted to just be good, Yeah.
And if I wasn't, then, well, again, there goes my value. Not singing has been a much longer, harder journey for me than guitar playing, but I feel like that's probably part of it. Yeah. Anyways, it's definitely something I think we need better language around so that people feel less inclined to skirt all the things that are challenging. If you can instead look at I actually just like the word mistake, because it's just like, it's just a mistake. You know, mistakes aren't big deals.
Yeah.
You make a lot of mistakes and you correct them.
Yes.
You know, it's
or you do something different next time.
Exactly. Yeah. It gives you an opportunity if you can approach it with curiosity and go, oh, I wonder why this didn't work out. Again, you can either experiment, explore, take notes, try things, or you can find guidance from somebody else who has experience, and then they can help guide you.
Yes. Yes.
And yeah, then it becomes more fun. It's like, oh yeah, oh here's another. It's like problem solving.
Yeah.
You know, it's you go, oh, this is like a problem. I'm having this problem right now with this not sounding good in my song, and so I wonder what I can do to fix it. And you like try some things. And I mean, nowadays too, having different resources online can be really helpful. Or again, you get feedback and that can really help. And yeah, and also, you know, for me, I think there was an avoidance in like acknowledging even where I knew I wasn't doing things well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we've talked about this before, but there's, you know, I think some part of me in some areas of like my guitar playing or singing or whatever, you know, I sort of sensed that I wasn't up to snuff, but like I couldn't face that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because for myself too, it was, you know, not just other people's opinion of me, but my own opinion of myself. And so it was really difficult to acknowledge that what I was doing wasn't perfect. And even more so if somebody were to point something out.
Yes.
You know, and that hesitation in sharing things with people or performing for people, because if anybody said anything less than that was perfect, there goes my confidence and self-worth completely out the window. But the thing that I've come to realize is I want to know. I want to know if something sounds bad or isn't working, because I know how to fix it. Like I have the skills and the tools to fix things. I just need the awareness. And sometimes I miss out if I'm not getting that feedback from somebody else.
Yeah. So I wonder if like at that time in your life where you were really, you didn't want people to point it out and you didn't really want to acknowledge it yourself. I wonder if that was a point in your life where you didn't have the tools yet. And so that was why there is that resistance.
You could be right. I feel like, yeah, because this is more like my early to mid 20s.
Yeah. So like that's something to keep in mind too. So for any listeners who you know, they're having a really hard time even acknowledging, like it might just be because you don't feel like you have the tools yet to, you know that you're not, there's gaps in your knowledge or there's things you need to work on, but you don't even know how to start working on them. So of course you're not going to want to acknowledge them because it's like, I don't even know how to tackle that problem yet. And so
that's so true.
That might be where framing it as mistakes, or like I'm having, this is challenging versus I'm failing. There's shame around failure. But if you can structure it as I'm being challenged in this area, then you might feel more compelled to reach out to people around you and to seek that help from the people who know what they're doing, and they can teach you the tools that you need. But like, you know, it's we just need to be gentler on ourselves. Yeah.
I think that's such a great point, because I don't even think I realized how many tools I've acquired over the last decade.
Yeah.
As I was desperately trying to figure out how to get myself to the next level in my musicianship and artistry in a healthy, sustainable way. Because I felt like I was like practicing constantly, but I was obviously, now I know that I was doing a lot of things wrong. And it just took a long time to figure that out. But yeah, I think you're exactly right, that the fact that I have so many of those tools now, and that I have people I trust I can go to for feedback as well, and that I've done it enough that I know it's, again, not the end of the world. Like I can survive it and I come out way better. Like, you know, my music now, my playing now, all of that is so much better because I'm doing it for people to hear, and then I can find out what clicks and what doesn't, and I just keep going back to the drawing board. It's and it's exciting too as you get further along in your journey. The mistakes you make are much more like about refinement. It's about the littler things, the details, and it's just about figuring out how to elevate what you're doing. So when you really get the hang of all that core stuff, when you make enough mistakes to really establish a strong foundation, then you get to really play with all the little intricate bits that just really bring something to life, which is a really exciting place to be in, especially because by that point you've probably figured out that, oh yeah, mistakes are a good thing. Failure really is only, to me, it feels like game over. It's like if you just stop completely.
Right.
That's the real failure, is if you just,
exactly.
You talk about like not showing up for yourself, failing yourself.
Yeah.
That to me, that's the only thing that I would ever really categorize as failure. Everything else is just an opportunity to learn.
I think, like, in a way, we can't really define anything as a failure until we're kind of at the end of our life. Because
that's so true.
Because it's like, even if I didn't show up, even if for the 100-day project, for instance, even if I stopped now, that's kind of, in my mind, a bit of a core failure because it's me not showing up. But I don't know how I'm going to use that experience as a learning opportunity in the future, right? Like, so like there's still the potential to learn from that. And if you're learning from that quote unquote failure, then it's, in my mind, not a failure anymore. And the only time we're not going to be able to learn from our failure anymore is when we are no longer living. So it just, I think we should just strike the word from our vocabulary. Like, it's just, I like mistakes.
Good news, everyone.
Challenges.
We have canceled failure.
Yeah, failure has been canceled by the power vested in us.
Yes.
Yeah, and the foundational blocks, and those are the things that are so hard for people to develop. I think because there is this misconception that like I want to sing and I should just be able to. I should just be able to if like, and again, and same with painting. Like there's this misconception that like if you're an artist you're just born knowing how to paint, and it's like that's not the case at all. And there's still things that like I was doing a painting yesterday and I realized like my scale was way off. Like I was I painted like these willow trees, and I realized like the trees in the background were larger than the trees in the foreground, which is a huge, like, that is a big mistake. But I was doing it quickly and I wasn't thinking clearly. And like these things are still happening to me. Like, it's not like my paintings are not perfect, definitely not perfect. And I'm still working on it and I'm still learning things and I'm still a work in progress. So I just wish more people were comfortable in the early stages, because I think that's where people give up. Yeah. Yeah. They see where they want to be, and they want to be at that point where they're focused on elevating versus like we want to skip that kind of foundational part, and you just can't. Yeah. I know. I was having this conversation with somebody recently but about, people don't like to do the kind of, like music exercises that are really good for developing that strong foundation. Like they like all the flashy, like sexy ones. And it's like, no, but it's really the ones that are going to do the most for you are the ones where you're really being faced with what you're able to do. And you're being challenged to do very simple things. Like, the number of students I have who struggle to play something on guitar and count at the same time. Like, which I will give you, that is challenging to learn, but it is foundational. You really want to learn it, because if you're trying to stack all of that extra stuff on top of nothing, it's like a cake, right? You want to have a really good cake,
and then yeah, it's fun to decorate it and put the icing on and all the sprinkles and everything. But you want a good cake. Like, first of all, make sure you have a cake to begin with. If you just have a plate of icing, I mean, unless you're like 3 years old, then maybe that's exciting.
Yeah.
But, if you want something that's like a good experience, you need to have a cake, and then you want the cake to be good. So you don't want to have a cake that's full of holes, that has like the wrong ingredients. You want to make sure that foundation is there, and then you have all that stuff to put on top. I feel like that's a whole conversation for another day. We could talk about foundational aspects of our art.
Yeah.
I would be so down for that.
And we've talked about this before. We've touched on this a bit before, too. Yeah.
Because I feel like that's something that really lights me up. I love all the really foundational things. And I lose some students that way because I think in their minds, they're like, they want to get onto the stuff that, again, is like more fun and flashy. But I'm like, no, what you got to do is I will give credit to a lot of my students who get it and who will stick with me through that, because we do the fun, flashy stuff too. But again, it has to have somewhere to go. But I think part of the reason people struggle with that is just because you're faced with making so many mistakes on stuff too. If it feels like, I don't get it, I don't get why this is important, then it's going to be hard to motivate yourself through that. But if you can understand that it's playing the long game and helping to build that foundation, then and that if you make a lot of mistakes in the beginning, you're going to learn faster. I think people might be more inclined to, at least roll with it.
I mean, part of the problem there too is that, and speaking from experience, like when I did piano lessons, I didn't really, I wanted to play songs. And that's actually how I learned. I didn't do a lot of those, what do you even call them? I didn't do a lot of those exercises. I just, I learned while playing songs, which I think probably ultimately is a slower way of learning, but it was the only way that I would stick with it. Cause I think the thing for me that will put me off, it's not so much like the making mistakes, but it's the kind of, I can find those things sort of boring, right? Like the fundamentals can feel boring, particularly when you're a kid. I think it's different for me as an adult, because it's like, I know I see the end goal and I see the part that this plays, and I'm better able to deal with the kind of boredom that I might feel while I'm kind of building the foundation. Although, to be fair, even with my painting, it's not like I sat down and learned how to mix colors, or I need to do this. I still haven't learned perspective. I kind of have an idea of what it is and stuff, but I don't, if you were to ask me to draw a building in perspective, it's like, I can't do that very well. So there's fundamental areas where I'm really weak. So my foundation is probably a little bit rocky because I've built it while just painting, and I've built it through learning from mistakes. So I look at things now and I'm like, oh yeah, I can see all the mistakes I've done in this piece. And then I think it's an okay way of learning. I mean, it depends on your brain, right? That way of learning works for me. I do think it is slower, but I don't necessarily think that you need to have the foundation down before you start creating. But then music is a different thing, I guess.
No, I'm with you there, actually. I would say that regardless of how much or how little somebody can do, you should start creating right away. I think this is definitely a conversation for another day. I don't want to go on too much of a tangent, but basically my philosophy around studying music is that you want what you're working on to be quite robust. So I would never say you have to focus on your foundation, don't do anything else. We do a mix of things.
Right.
I do a mix of things in my own musical life and in practice and in creativity, but I do that with my teaching too, where we definitely I definitely work on songs with students, absolutely. But it's I make sure we're working on the foundation too. The thing is, a foundation isn't going to be very helpful for you musically if you don't have context for it. And that's what the songs are for.
Right,
that's what creating is for.
Right.
So there's a lot you can learn, and you can definitely have this back and forth relationship between learning some more of the foundational things, developing your time field, developing your ear, developing your theoretical understanding, developing your technique, all of that. You can have that relationship matched up with learning songs, where maybe you have a song you want to learn. And I often do this with students, where we'll pick a song and then I'll design exercises around that song. So we might learn something just a really simple example. We'll learn about the major scale, but we're going to learn it in a way that applies to this song. We learn about chordal harmony. We're going to learn it in a way that applies to this song. Oh, this song introduces this technique. So we're going to create exercises that help you work in this technique because you can see that it directly connects. So I have all sorts of like things I do in teaching to make sure it always connects. I think it's always important to bring it back to music.
Yes.
I think one of the best things you can do to improve as a musician is to learn songs, but you want that. It's all about balance, right? So anyways, I don't want to go on to too much of a tangent because I have many thoughts around that, but I think you and I are on the same page.
Yeah,
yes, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I've always I learned from doing, I guess.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, okay, let's think like tips for people who have this kind of fear of quote unquote failure, which is a word that we have stricken from the dictionary.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like the idea of intentionally trying to create something or do something that's bad is an interesting exercise to try because you're facing your greatest fear. It reminds me a bit of I can't remember what artist it was, but a lot of artists do this where that blank canvas can be really intimidating because it's like, you know, what if I like there's that fear of making a mistake, which you're going to along the way. And so some artists, and I've done this before too, will just make a big line on the canvas, or they'll color it. Like I paint my canvas a solid color before I start working on it. So, you know, things like that can be helpful to kind of get you over that hump. But I'm wondering if there's other things that you can think of.
I would say create a lot.
Yeah.
So whatever it is you're afraid of, whether it's writing songs, painting, whether it's, you know, performing live, do it a lot. And then embrace the mistakes. You know, just the more you do it, the more mistakes are going to be revealed. And then you take those mistakes and you learn from them. And as you get better and you correct the mistakes that you've made previously, there are going to be new ones. And that's a good thing. You know, it's a part of the process. So really, you know, quality, the idea that quality is born of a quantity, you know, it's when you create a lot or you practice a lot or you play a lot, you perform a lot, that is going to be what helps you to produce something of quality. You know, it takes time and it takes having those errors pop up. You know, it's the idea I've heard, you know, with some software developers where they want people to try to break their programs because then that's how they make them better. Because if there's a bug, you want to know so that you can fix it.
And I think don't make the mistake of thinking that there's ever going to be a point where you stop learning and you stop making mistakes. Like there is never going to be that point. You're always going to continue evolving if you're dedicated. Yeah. And if you want to continue learning the thing. And I think too, like if you're, you know, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone and you're facing these fears and you're, you know, so in the case of live performing, that can be extremely anxiety inducing to push yourself to do that thing that you're really scared of failing at. So to also really celebrate when you do it. Yeah, I think that's really important. Like it doesn't matter if you fall flat on your face, just celebrate the fact that you even did it in the first place. I mean, I think people who are particularly with like live performing, look to what stand-up comedians have to do. It's incredible because they're not born like funny, you know, like they have to bomb so many times before they figure it out. And what's amazing is like, I really do admire stand-up comics because they, you know, when they test out material, like they're testing it out. And that means that they're taking risks. And what they're risking is that no one laughs at their joke. And you know how awful that feels? Like we've all had that experience where we're trying to tell a funny story and no one laughs. And it feels so like, imagine doing that on stage. So in terms of like creative professions, I feel like stand-up comics are probably the ones that are most able to deal with that. Like they're the ones who've overcome that fear of failure because there is no choice. You have to if you're going to be a successful comedian.
Yeah. So
look to them, see what they do because like they're pretty inspiring.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely it's especially, and that's the thing, especially if you're just getting started, now is the time to take risks and make mistakes and get in front of people. Because here's the thing that we all, I think, eventually learn. Unfortunately, we kind of learn it, later than we'd like. But, for those of us who are concerned about what other people might think, remember that people ultimately don't really care about you. They care about themselves.
That's true.
I can almost guarantee that if somebody sees you bomb on stage or sees an early, version of a song or painting something that you're doing and it's not great, they're not really gonna care. They're not gonna remember. That's not gonna be what keeps them up at 3 a.m. They're not gonna wake up and go, oh, that performance was so bad, or oh, like that person must be very embarrassed. Like, what a terrible person. Like, they're not thinking about that. They're going to be remembering the thing they said to somebody in 10th grade that got taken the wrong way, and they're going to agonize around that. We're all very, very self-centered.
Yeah.
Our internal dialogue and monologue it's just very driven around the stuff that concerns us. And so you just have to remember that, and yeah, it's still embarrassing, but, again, nobody dies. You get over it. You just get back up and you do it again, because the only thing, to quote one of my favorite Bent Knee lyrics, the only thing that matters is not giving up.
Yeah.
Well, so just don't give up. Just keep going. Yeah. I thought about getting that tattooed. I still might do that.
It's funny how we feel shame about trying something and failing at it, but we don't have the same shame around just not even trying in the first place. There's more fear. No, we have shame about not trying, I think. But let me rephrase. There's more fear of potentially failing at a thing versus a fear of never even trying the thing.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's anxiety around not trying. Like that, for me anyways, there was definitely a sense, as I was playing it safe over the years, there was a sense of I know I can be doing more. I know I should be doing more. And so that just made me feel really anxious and made me feel bad. I think it was less shame, but definitely I felt bad. Although maybe I did feel some shame. It's a little hard to tell because it all kind of blends together. But I felt bad knowing that I wasn't doing the thing I felt like I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I feel like this is why I'm here. Why am I not doing it? Why am I so afraid? And so that created a lot of tension where I was too afraid to make a move, both because I was afraid of falling on my face and being thought a fool, and also because I was afraid of, like we talked about last week, being seen, which actually really is kind of the same thing. I was like, it all comes down to me being afraid of people seeing that I'm not perfect. And yeah, that was just at the time strong enough that it kept me small.
Yeah. Well, I hope this episode was helpful to those who fear messing up.
Yeah. It's really not the end of the world. Do it a lot. You'll get better.
Still doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Just keep showing up. Just keep trying. And if there's people in your life who are giving you a hard time about making mistakes, then do what you can to get those people out of your life, because they sound like miserable people. Yeah,
really, because I think what I've experienced as I am doing more to embrace making mistakes and being in this state of constant growth is that it's made me a lot kinder and more empathetic to people and more compassionate. And so if you see somebody falling short, there's a lot less judgment. I feel like I was a lot more judgmental previously because I was so deeply insecure.
Yeah.
And it was just and that's the thing to remember too, is if anybody is tearing you down for making a mistake or not doing something well, it's their own insecurity that they're projecting onto you. Don't let it get to you. They're not doing anything, chances are, or they've tried and they have failed in that they didn't get back up. They didn't keep going.
Or they're dealing with their own fear of failure. I think that's a big one too, right? If you see someone, if you're dealing with your own fear of failure and then you see someone else putting out something that is to your eyes of less quality or something, all of a sudden it kind of it makes you, I think we react to that in some cases because it's why am I not putting myself out there? Why am I succumbing to this fear and they're not? It kind of calls you out on your own BS.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see that sometimes with comments where, somebody will tell a person who's whether they're doing YouTube or they're doing art or music or whatever, and be like, oh, you haven't made it yet. You're too old. you might as well just like give up and just like go do something else. And it's like that person is obviously projecting. That's probably an excuse they're using.
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
Oh, I'm too old. And maybe they're seeing somebody who's then doing that, not using their age as an excuse.
And then they're threatened by that.
They're confronted. Yeah, they're confronted with the reality that what they've been telling themselves is not proper justification. It's an excuse.
Right, because that person's existence and the way they're putting their stuff out there isn't allowing. It's not allowing, like, this person no longer feels enabled to use this excuse.
Exactly.
Because this other person is countering it, and that can be, and then it's like your choice is either react against the thing you're seeing or face the fact that you are succumbing to your own fears or whatever, right? Like that's really interesting. I'll have to think on that some more because, Anyways.
Yeah, just I mean, this is, something that, again, might be sort of unrelated, but, if you're thinking in terms of just being afraid of what people might say, that's also, I think, ties into the fear of success, of course. It's like as soon as you start putting stuff out there and it is something people can find, you're going to get all kinds of responses.
Oh, yeah.
You just learn to let that stuff slide because, again, it's really not about you. People don't really care. They're just trying to make themselves feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Not about you. It's about them when they make comments. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should we share the exciting thing that happened this week?
So we got a lovely email from my friend Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
She's like my oldest friend. We've been friends for like 25 years now.
Aww.
And I love her dearly, and I don't get to see her often enough, but she has sent us an email saying she's been getting caught up on our podcast and that she's really enjoying it. It's become sort of part of her like evening routine, which is really nice. I'm so glad. And she's talking about she's been getting some stuff out of what we've been discussing, which is great. She actually shared something that she and her husband Alan do, and I asked her if she would mind if we shared it on one of our episodes, and she said, yeah, definitely. So let me just read through what she says here. She said, I wanted to give you an idea that we do at home that is always fun at the end of the year and can be just a fun way to see your progress or achievements through the year, either personal or professional. We do a happiness jar. We write down little things that made the day a happy one on a piece of paper. So personal achievements, good news, fun outings, things that made us laugh, cute things the kids have said / done, etc. We put them in a jar. No set schedule, just write something whenever you think of it. At the end of the year, Alan and I sit down together and go through all the pieces of paper. It ends the year on a positive note and just puts us in a good mental space. We've been doing this for almost 8 years now and love this tradition. She says that she can see this, being adapted for goals and that sort of thing too. Yeah, and it's just it sounds like it's a good chance to just sort of celebrate the things that made you happy, the things that made you proud. And so I love this idea.
Yeah,
I found this little like nice glass jar I wasn't using. So I've designated that my happiness jar. So
nice.
I cut up some pieces of paper because I had a couple of big wins this week. So I just wanted to acknowledge them because it's so easy. It's so easy to be really critical of ourselves and our lives and all of that. And so to have a chance to, like, in the moment, acknowledge that something is making you happy or something, you've had some sort of accomplishment, I think that's really nice. But I love the idea of also looking back at the end of the year and being able to see all of them add up, because it's so easy to let all of the negative stuff kind of outweigh all of the positive. But
absolutely,
we take for granted, just how much good we have, especially if we're acknowledging even just little things. Like, I like the idea that it can just be something like you went out and did something fun. Like, that's a nice thing, rather than feeling like it always has to be these big, like, external goals.
Yeah.
Just these nice little reminders of things that make you feel good and inspire you or whatever. So yeah, I'm enjoying that so far. Just being able to jot things down that feel noteworthy.
Yeah, I mean, I love that, because I think as a species, we're kind of hardwired to want more and like to look outside of ourselves and see what people have that we don't have and to want those things. So to like really kind of focus in on the day-to-day happy moments and what we have, helps do some brain rewiring, which I think is great. Yeah, what a great, like, and I'm like you too. I love that kind of the annual read through. Like, what a lovely thing to do, either by yourself or with someone, or, you know. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
And Jess also shared a picture of their dog Maya.
Oh, I was so fluffy. Excited about that. I'd forgotten that we had
said that in like the first episode or something.
That dog is adorable. Anyways, I was like, I forgot all about this. That was a good thing that we threw into that episode.
Yeah, I look forward to people finding our podcast and then us periodically getting pictures of people's pets.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something I'm going to add in my jar. I should set up my printer and print her picture. It's very cute. I love looking at cute little dogs.
Would it be kind of creepy if we just started printing off these pictures and putting them on our wall?
I don't think so.
We need to get a podcast studio so that we can like plaster the walls.
We can have like a pet wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do like pet of the month.
Yeah. But it's going to be hard to pick, so they're all going to be.
That's right. They're all
hundreds
special.
Of pets. Yeah. I have to make sure we get Freya up on that wall too.
Yes, absolutely.
And Dresden, R.I.P. I'll just draw a little like angel wings on her. I'll make her like a little ghost.
Aww.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Jess, for writing in. I'm so glad you're enjoying the podcast. And anybody who wants to send us an email, send us some questions or ideas or insights or anything, you know, you are welcome to send us an email at streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. But before I do the full closing outro, we got to talk about what we're doing this week.
Oh, yes. I forgot about that. I got distracted.
We got so excited by the email and the idea and the dog.
Yeah.
And talking about our future podcast studio.
That's right. And it sounds like our future podcast, which is going to be about pets. We might pivot halfway through.
You heard it here first, folks. We're going to scrap the art idea and just talk about pets.
What's on for this week? I'm back to work full time. So it's going to be an adjustment week for me. And I mean, I have to finish the commissions. I've been saying that for the past like 3 weeks. Yeah. So I'm just going to take it easy, stick to my routine, keep painting, keep showing up, and we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm sort of getting back into the swing of things this week as well.
Yeah.
Obviously I've been teaching, but a lot of my other music things have sort of gone out the window as I was working on RPM, of course. Yes. That always happens. So yeah, I keep having these moments this past week where I realize just how much freedom I have now.
Right.
In just being able to choose what I want to work on next. And so I have lots of things I want to get going on. Like, of course, my full-length album, I have a lot of work to do there, but also like I haven't properly practiced guitar since January, and I'm itching to get back to it. So I'm gonna get started on that this week too. And of course I'm doing week 1 of the Artist's Way. So I'm gonna have some work to do through the week, doing reading and working through the workbook and all of that. So
I'm so curious to hear how that goes for you. You'll have to update us every week.
I will. Yeah, definitely. I'm also very curious.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is probably the right time for me to do it. Just as I was reading through the introduction, I feel like there's definitely a lot that resonated.
Okay, cool.
I feel like I need a push forward, and I think this might just be something that'll help.
Right.
But yeah, other than that, I think it's gonna be and reading more of Slow Productivity. I think I'll probably be done reading it by the end of the week. All right, yeah. So as I was saying, feel free to email us streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, or if you want to send us a picture of your pet, we are still very open to receiving those. And it don't just have to be dogs. Of course, we're dog people, but if you have a cat, if you have some kind of a reptile, if you have birds, if you have, what else do people have? Fish?
Bunnies.
Yeah.
Bunnies are big right now.
Are they?
I think so. Yeah. Oh, pigs. Lots of people have pigs too.
Oh, like little teacup pigs?
Yeah.
Or I guess they a lot of people get the really big ones. Or
I
guess
don't know if
they grow
teacup
into
pigs actually exist. Yeah, I think they all like grow quite
they all
large.
just grow into yeah. Anyways, yeah, any kind of a pet you have, send us a picture. Also, we have an Instagram that I assume has not been active. I mean, I haven't been active on it.
Yeah, I kind of dropped the ball on that one.
I'm gonna get back. Yeah, we'll get back into it. February was a month. I finally got back into posting our little reel for the podcast on my Instagram.
Right.
After not doing it for like a month. But you can follow us on Instagram. We are at Stream of Art Podcast. We promise we'll start posting stuff eventually.
That was such a loose promise. Like, we promise we'll start posting eventually. No timeline, no anything.
Yeah, it's like I want to create the element of suspense.
Yeah.
So people don't know when it's coming. It's all of a sudden we'll drop something and it'll be, really exciting.
Yeah, so you better follow us so that when that happens, you don't want to be in the know.
You don't want to miss out. You don't want to be the only one of your friends who misses that post. You can also join our Discord, of course. So something we're experimenting with is letting our Discord followers know what our topic is the week ahead. So if you're part of our Discord, you'll be able to drop a question or a thought even before the episode airs, and then we can talk about it on the podcast. So, and it's also just a great place to, talk about the current episodes. So we post each week every time the episode drops, and we have a channel specifically for discussion, and we have a bunch of other channels and all of that. And yeah, so feel free to join and, even just come and share your work if you are an artist, a musician, a writer, whatever. Yeah, just come and share what you're working on.
Yeah.
And eventually I'd love this community to be big enough that people could like find people to collaborate with and, do like, let it be sort of a hub for creative people where you can, get encouragement or make connections or, share resources or share your work or whatever. So you can, maybe that would be a great place, because right now we just have a few people, who are there. It's a very safe place to go and share your work. So if you're just trying to make a lot of mistakes right now with the stuff you're doing, it's a great place to share it, because there's just not a lot of people who are going to see it. But it gives you the chance to exercise that muscle of making a lot and then sharing it.
Yeah, putting yourself out there.
Because we will see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the community is small now, but hopefully it'll get bigger. And you can also share pictures of your pets there if you'd like.
Oh, yes.
We should just make that a whole channel.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, we
Creative
should do that.
pets.
Creative pets.
Not that the pets have to be creative, but that they are the pets of creatives.
Yes, I like
that. And do we have that Pinterest launched too? Is that something we want to share?
Oh, yeah. So I'm playing around with my own Pinterest because I've heard it's a good way of generating traffic to like blogs and stuff like that. So I thought it's just an experiment. So I've just been sharing on my own Pinterest account. I've just been sharing sort of like one little episode update things that link to our episode. So I can't remember what my handle is on Pinterest. It's like Robyn Lester Art probably. So if you want to find me on there, you can. But I don't know how long I'm going to stick with that. Like I'm going to try it out I think I'll try it out for the next like few months, see what happens. Go from there. Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think that's it. I think the time change is really messing with my brain.
Oh my gosh. My stomach has been growling. There's going to be so much editing that you have to do because my stomach has been very noisy for the past like 15 minutes.
It probably won't pick it up.
Really?
Well, actually, so here's a little, what is this, insider baseball? So what I do when we're having a conversation, so when you're talking, the microphone's mostly going to pick up what you're saying. Right. So it's not like your speaking is going to fight with the sounds of your stomach. It'll just be covered. And then if it's me talking, I delete all of the air.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's just like you where you're not speaking. So like all of that gets cleaned up so that there aren't any little noises. So
okay, perfect.
That's never an issue. Yeah, so no worries there.
It's being very vocal this morning.
All right, well, then you better go eat.
Yeah.
All right, thank you everybody for listening once again to our insights and our thoughts and our ramblings and our tangents. and our hungry stomachs. Actually, I'm not hungry. I ate this morning, so I'm good. But I am tired. So good luck to all of you who are dealing with the time change. I think those of you who are in Europe, I still have to wait. I think yours is like a week behind. So enjoy having a week where you're not sleeping.
Happy Mother's Day to those I think it's in the UK.
Okay.
I know.
I was like, oh no, it's Mother's
threw
Day.
Me up. I know, because I saw an Instagram post and it was like, Happy Mother's Day. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like so confused. And then it was someone who was not in Canada. Yeah. Just
all right. Well,
throwing that out there.
Well, happy Mother's Day in the UK.
And maybe elsewhere too. I don't know.
And maybe elsewhere.
Yeah.
Not here.
Not here though. Let's end this. We've got to end this.
We got to go. All right. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.